Steve Basic Architect. Yeah, we're out at the offsite build. Rough framing out here. You know what I want to talk about today? Talk about a conversation that I probably have a dozen times every year, right? Let's talk about stud spacing and just advanced framing in general. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, my time at Building Science Corporation, I did a lot of work on advanced framing. We've wrote a ton of articles on it, worked with different companies, trying to develop a more efficient way to frame a house. And I know there's some steadfast framers that say, oh, never want to go to 24 inches, 16 inches, you need it. Your walls are going to be wavy, all this. I've heard all of those stories. Probably not everyone, but I've certainly heard a lot of them. My contention is that for as many people that talk about wavy walls, I can probably show you a 2x6 16-inch on center wavy wall somewhere here in New England, right? It's not necessarily a function of the spacing. And the fundamental idea is in advanced framing, optimized framing, optimized value engineering, OVE framing, they're all there. And a couple points. Just because you do advanced framing on a house doesn't mean all of a sudden you become super energy efficient, right? It's a small piece of the pie, right? There's a whole bunch of other things that I want to do to become more energy efficient: air tightness, insulation levels, equipment performance. There's a whole bunch of things. But framing helps contribute to it, right? So it's like if you were saying, I have an airplane and I need to shed 1,000 pounds, you're not just going to go and throw 1,000 pounds worth of the engine. You're going to throw 50 pounds of this out the window, you're going to throw 20 pounds of this out the window, and you're going to shave it down by looking at all the components that make up the whole to make that savings in the weight. Well, they're kind of the same in the house. When you look at your energy bill and you say, okay, how do we reduce that by 30 or 40%? There's no singular solution of, hey, we're just going to go up and insulate the attic. Yeah, that might save 3% or 4%. It's not going to save 50%. And like that, advanced framing and OVE framing, whatever you want to call it, it's not out here to all of a sudden just save you 50%, but they do contribute to the whole. So, difference between 16-inch on center and 24-inch on center, right? Obviously, in every 4-foot section, I take one stud out of the wall, right? So if I look at around a house that has, say, 400 linear feet of wall, right? That's 100 studs that I took out of the wall, or 100 inches, which means roughly about a little over 8 feet of that wall now switched from an R5 to the cavity R21, right? So that's 8 feet of wall, which is probably, from the corner there to about here. So imagine all of this wall going from R5 to R21 or whatever our insulation level is there. So immediately there's a slight impact. 8 feet of wall over the 400 feet, it's a small percentage. But go into that 24 inches. And if you were going from, say, a 2x4 wall to a 2x6 wall, when you buy wood, I was told, you buy it by, the lumber yards are buying it by the board foot. So they're buying it as kind of raw volume of wood. They don't buy it by the stud, right? Lumber mills don't do that. They sell it to you by the stud, but when they buy it in a lumber mill, they're talking in board feet. So if you did the calculation of 3 2x4 studs versus 2 2x6 studs, which is that, or yes, 4 versus 3, the board footage in a 4-foot section of wall, 2x4 16 and a 2x6 24, it's the same board footage. So it's basically the same volume of board or same cost to put that wall together there. So I typically do 2x6, 24 inches on center. I probably, I would venture to guess, have probably close to 8,000 homes framed like this. I used to do the work for a large production home builder in the Southwest, and with him alone, we had 6,000 to 7,000 homes that we did over our time together down there, plus all the custom homes, remodeling work over the 30 years. But we've never had a major problem. I've never come into a house and say, oh my God, look at how wavy that wall is. Is there some inclination, if I take it and I look down a wall, is it perfect? No, but you know what? Not every wall is perfect either. Even if I did frame this at 2x6s, 12 inches on center, you have a challenge. Now, there's some out there that subscribe to the idea that spreading the spacing actually provides a better value to your wall, right? And the reason for that is that when I attach drywall to the wood stud, the stud is the only thing in that wall that wants to move. The screw never changes dimension and the drywall never changes dimension. Wood will change dimension based on the season, moisture content, a bunch of little variables that can move it. Well, what do you think happens when a stud dries out and brings the screw with it? And the screw doesn't change dimension, so the screw brings the drywall with it. But the drywall doesn't want to change dimension. You get drywall cracks, right? You see them quite often. I do remember we had a builder out in Chicago that we were working with, and we switched to an OVE framing style, and they actually reduced their callbacks on drywall cracking and having to go back and fix things in the house. Now, their framing methods were somewhat overly aggressive, right? The guy screwing the drywall thought he had a machine gun when he was attaching the drywall to the header. And you'd look up there and it was, the 30% of your header was metal screws. But anyways, getting back to OVE frame. Going to a 24-inch on center, if I took this house and calculated, and I've done it on other houses, I haven't done it on this one, you're probably looking at about somewhere around 18 to 20% of the wall is what I would call opaque framing. That's if we took all of the studs, the jacks, the kings, and we put them all together as one component of the three components of a wall system, the other two being the cavity and a door and window, right? As the opaque framing, we're probably in that 18 to 20% range. If I go to 24 inches on center and I do some of the OVE framing where I insulate the headers and such, I'm able to take that number and probably reduce it down to like 12, 13, maybe 14%. If you're really aggressive and go to a single top plate and some of these other things that I don't quite subscribe to, you might be able to get even push the limits of say 11%, somewhere in that number. So what we're really talking about is taking 20% of the wall and switching it to cavity and reducing it down to that 12 or 15%, right? Taking 5 to say 7% out of the wall and making the switch. So there is some help there, but understand that it's not the reason we're doing that 50% reduction, right? So advanced framing is one of those things that I always look at that it's part of the recipe, but it's only one ingredient. It isn't the thing that makes it taste the best or taste the worst. It is the thing that contributes to the success of whatever you're cooking there, right? It's that one ingredient. So, there's a lot of other things that we can look at. We talked about pocket headers in a previous video there. Here we have the rip sill. There's some builders that'll take the lower cripple here and they'll eliminate it and take the rough sill and put it in here. So this jack will actually be a lower cripple and an upper cripple, and this will slide in, and that'll allow you to remove all of these from the left and right of the windows. Now, in this house here, the reason that I don't get too crazy on the fact that, okay, we want to put those cripples in. You know, there's some battles that I know I can fight and win. There's some battles I know that will be a constant battle of us just trying to gain and lose ground, right? Where nobody really wins. That's one of them. The double top plate is one of them. Building inspectors, framers. There's a lot of reasons that I've come to understand, okay, maybe the double top plate, it's not a fight. So the way that I kind of come around that is I simply go on the outside and I install an insulating sheathing, right? So that now when I put the R9 sheathing on, then my opaque area and some of those other areas, I'm making up for the R value in the wall system with that R sheathing. And if you want to, you go back and look. I have a video where I talk about whole wall R value, and I get into the numbers about using insulating sheathing and all of this stuff. But I just want to have a really quick talk about advanced framing. It's a great thing. You should do it. We should think about it. But don't be under the perspective that advanced framing is the difference between a code-built house and, say, a passive house, because it's nowhere near that. It's a small contribution to the great success of what we do. So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed that little talk. This is more about a little fireside chat, even though I don't have the fireside here, but a little Studside Chat. How about that? For framers out there, a little Studside Chat. I'm Steve Basic Architect. This is the Offsite Build Project. Until next time, long live our buildings.